This is Get Ready, Florida. Prepare, recover, rebuild. Presented by the Fair Foundation and sponsored by Florida Power and Light, Storm Peace, FedNat Insurance Company, and Y-Green. In partnership with the International Hurricane Research Center at Florida International University, the National Emergency Management Association, the Salvation Army, and Rebuild 850. This is the new normal. Heightened tropical activity that produces mega storms. A cone of potential impact so wide, it covers entire states. Storm surge so powerful, it brings massive destruction and even death. A flash flooding that shuts down major highways and grinds traffic to a halt. Hurricane season is not a spectator sport. Surviving it begins here. And now.
I'm Craig Fugate, your host, and this is Get Ready, Florida. When Hurricane Harvey roared into the Texas coast in 2017, it was the first major hurricane to make landfall in the U.S. since Hurricane Wilma ravaged South Florida in 2005. 12 years. That's a long time for people to get complacent, but no more. The last 2 years have seen a string of storms that have claimed lives and caused tens of billions in property damage.
The biggest of them, Hurricane Irma, was one of the most intense hurricanes ever recorded in the Atlantic Basin. Arriving the week after Labor Day in 2017, Irma brought 185-mile-an-hour winds, sustained for 37 hours, prompting the largest evacuation order in Florida history. 6.8 million people. Then, just 1 year later, Hurricane Michael pummeled the Florida Panhandle nearly as a Category 5 storm, the fourth most powerful storm ever to reach the U.S. mainland, and the strongest to hit the Panhandle. 375,000 people were warned to evacuate, but many refused. Hundreds even rode out the storm in Mexico Beach, where Michael made landfall, leaving a swath of unimaginable devastation.
We know that this area is prone to storms, but something like this that's so unprecedented, you can't prepare for the kind of destruction that we experienced. You can't prepare for the service to be cut off and not being able to communicate with loved ones.
You know, the pictures of the devastation in the Panhandle from Hurricane Michael could almost be a poster, if you will, for why you need to evacuate. If you live on the coast, the power of storm surge, it's deadly, it's life-threatening. If you are told to go, you need to go. Otherwise, you're going to put your life in danger. And for folks that think they will ride it out and survive it, they're taking a huge, huge gamble.
We decided that we were going to evacuate literally the last moment. That decision was made because of a gut feeling that I had at the last minute. I've already boarded up my house and we were going to ride the storm out. I spoke with my wife and I said, I think we should leave. And she said, I think we'll be fine. And I said, no, something in my stomach saying this isn't going to be good.
You know, many of us feel like we're immune from hurricanes after we've survived a few, and that's simply not the case. Every storm has the potential to be a deadly storm, and we have to change the mindset of Floridians regarding evacuation. Evacuation is not a sign of weakness. It's not a sign of defeat. It's simply the right thing to do. So when local officials tell you to evacuate, you should follow the order.
Well, there can be many reasons why people decide not to evacuate. They have pets. They're afraid to leave their home alone, and after an event, security reasons. They want to protect their possessions. Possibly there's an elderly loved one, someone with special needs. Or they haven't thought out where they're going to go.
Shelters in every community provide a safe place to ride out a storm free of charge. Many are able to accommodate people with special needs, including seniors, and many accept pets.
Hurricane Michael left thousands homeless and without critical infrastructure for months. When we return, lessons learned from Hurricane Irma and why hardening the state's energy grid is an urgent statewide priority.
Your home may not be as strong as it needs to be. The Fair Foundation helps people prepare for the next natural disaster. We provide Florida families and businesses with resources to understand the risk of catastrophic damage due to wind and water, harden your property against storm damage, and ensure that properties are fully insured with affordable coverage. Did you know that 1 in 4 Florida homes are currently at risk for flood and storm surge but are not insured? Call your agent or the Fair Foundation today. We are your voice and your best resource.
Strong storm, the trees are down and the lights are out.
No air conditioning, no refrigerator.
I get how strong the storm was, but I need my power back.
We get it. We don't just work for FPL, we're customers too.
After a storm hits, restoring power safely and as quickly as possible is our #1 priority. That's why we work to stay prepared. We have resources in place so we can be ready to respond in good weather and bad. Storm season is here and FPL is ready.
Welcome back to Get Ready Florida. Prepare, recover, rebuild.
Hurricane Irma's size, strength, and duration meant widespread power outages in Florida. One utility, the state's biggest, Florida Power and Light, reported 4.4 million customers without power across all 35 counties in its service area. But this time, Florida was better prepared.
After the 2004 and 2005 hurricane season, in which FPL experienced 7 hurricanes in an 18-month period, we took significant action after that event to really revisit the way that we respond to hurricanes. And several initiatives came out of that. First of all, we instituted a pole inspection program to inspect all our 1.2 million poles. We also increased our vegetation trimming. We also encouraged some of our customers to underground their facilities. And most of all, we went back and we strengthened our grid to withstand winds up to 145 miles per hour. So these investments that we're making make our grid both stronger and smarter, so we have better information at our fingertips after the storm has passed, and also it minimizes the amount of damage that we experience. So we've invested several $billion into our infrastructure to strengthen our grid.
No utility grid can withstand the full power of nature. But changes like these have accelerated hurricane recovery. When Hurricane Michael left 1 million people without power, an army of energy workers from all over the country converged on the Panhandle. Florida Power and Light Senior Vice President Manny Miranda was tapped to lead the restoration effort in Northwest Florida.
Their restoration efforts was really a coordinated effort amongst the municipalities, the co-ops, the investor-owned utilities. The state did a great job of bringing everyone together to make sure that there was a cohesive plan on how to restore service to those customers.
But full recovery for the Panhandle is years away, prompting several former state leaders and a host of partners to create Rebuild 850.
Well, when you think of the victims of Hurricane Michael and the residents living in the Panhandle, this is already an area that is economically challenged. It's an area that's rural. It's an area that's sometimes forgotten in the state of Florida, and they're in great need. Many of them did not have insurance and they've lost their homes. Even though the power has been restored by utility companies, many of them don't have a home to turn power onto anymore, or they don't have the resources to connect their homes to the power. And so this is a very serious situation. And as Floridians, we don't let other Floridians suffer. When we see suffering, we run to it. We help our brothers and sisters. And the idea behind Rebuild 850 is to do just that. It's to rebuild. It's to bring awareness. It's to bring money. It's to bring volunteers. It's to alleviate the suffering that's taking place.
Storm hardening works, and it makes hurricane-prone states like Florida more resilient when the big storms hit. That hardening begins with tougher building codes. Florida completely overhauled its building codes after the devastation wrought by Hurricane Andrew more than 25 years ago.
I personally went into the Keys after Hurricane Irma. And when it came to just looking at the buildings, I was pleasantly surprised in seeing a lot of structures still standing, but they were the new structures. They were the new homes and businesses that were built to the newer, stricter building codes. Older structures, of course, did not do so well. Same thing applies in the Panhandle with Hurricane Michael, where you saw homes that were built decades ago under less stringent codes. Certainly they didn't do as well with the wind. Certainly they didn't do well with storm surge. But there are even examples now in the Panhandle of homes that were built with the stricter code and with even Code Plus innovation. They withstood the winds. So it shows you that when we do rebuild the Panhandle and we continue to rebuild the Keys or anywhere in Florida that gets hit, there are ways to build back stronger, build back better, build back smarter, so that they all will be more resilient. For many Florida residents who live in older homes, there are ways now to take a step back and think to themselves, how can I now mitigate and strengthen the home that I live in today? What are the materials used in the walls? The shape of the roof? How well is the roof tied down? How many windows? How old is your garage door? And once you have that scorecard, you can then go through that list and now decide and prioritize, where do I start first to harden and fortify my home?
I think the main reason that Floridians, fail to be prepared for a storm or a hurricane is they really don't understand what their options are, or if there are any other options out there. Most people think that if they don't have the cash on hand, they might not be able to do the actual improvements needed. PACE stands for Property Assessed Clean Energy, so it's a great different financing option than your traditional credit financing. There's really hundreds of improvements that are approved through the program, but generally speaking, Floridians tend to go more towards home hardening, storm preparedness type projects like windows, doors, roofing. Generators happen to be another big option that people are taking up right now. The majority of PACE companies have independent contractor groups that they work with that are all licensed and insured. But if someone does have a contractor that's not in the program, they can be trained and brought into the program to offer PACE financing. The benefit to a property owner is that they can feel very comfortable that they're very likely to get approved for the program. It's based almost, again, solely on your property's home equity. So if you have a 10% equity position left in your home, generally speaking, you'll be approved for the program. We offer longer terms, up to 30 years, with very competitive fixed rate financing. The nice thing about it is it's actually paid with your property taxes. So if your property taxes come once a year, you'll pay that once a year with our bill as well. If it's twice a year, like it is in other states, it might be paid twice a year. I think the reason it's a great alternative to traditional home financing is that, one, it does give you the opportunity to do no money down on your projects. You're very likely to be approved over traditional credit options. And I think it's just something that you can take advantage of as another tool out there in the marketplace.
This is also the time to pull out your home insurance policy and make sure your insurance is adequate. After the break, do you know what your insurance covers? And is it enough to make you whole again if the worst happens?
We knew we had a very old air conditioner here, and we knew that our windows were really bad.
I had to put up metal shutters if a storm was approaching.
And now it just works so good. Our insurance went down $7,000.
I can't believe everybody doesn't use Y-Green. To me, it's a no-brainer.
With Y-Green, the Millers found a better way to finance home improvements for energy efficiency, renewables, and storm protection. Imagine what you can do. Call now or visit ygreen.com today.
Welcome back to Get Ready Florida. Prepare, recover, rebuild.
In the new normal environment, where Florida may face increasingly powerful storms year upon year, the only thing standing between each of us and financial devastation is insurance. But many Floridians are underinsured, or they have no idea what they're covered for, or they lack key protections. That's everyone's problem, because resilient communities need to rebuild quickly before the next storm looms.
I think homeowners should constantly be looking at what their home might need and be, to be further prepared for storms. I think things like windows and doors and roofing, generators are the obvious, but having someone who's a professional that understands what might be needed most in that area is really critical, and I recommend that to everyone.
You need to check to see if you have flood insurance, one of the most important factors that goes unrecognized within the state. Do you have a wind deductible? You should have a checklist and ask questions of your insurance agent, because they'll provide you with the correct coverages, Perhaps save you money, but definitely protect your home adequately.
Many homeowners assume everything is covered by their insurance policy, but it's not. Your company will only pay for what the policy specifies, and insurance companies will not change coverage once a hurricane watch or warning has been issued. Many people disregard the need for flood insurance. They think if their home is not in a flood zone or if their bank doesn't require it, they don't need it. But as we saw with Hurricane Florence in 2018, flooding can be a greater threat than wind.
It's important to have flood insurance because flood is actually the most common and the most costly natural disaster in the United States. Even if you're not in a known flood zone, you definitely have exposure to flood and should look into purchasing a policy to cover that peril. Most flood insurance policies have a 30-day waiting period before they go into effect, so it's a really good idea to plan in advance for that so that you'll be covered in the event of a catastrophe.
I personally physically fared okay. I was able to evacuate, but coming back to my home, I realized that I took substantial damage to my property, trees, missing roof, personal property, everything damaged, and I'm displaced at the moment. So the house is kind of what we're expecting is a total loss.
Most homeowners don't read the fine print on their homeowner's insurance policy and assume they're covered for things they're not. But typical home insurance policies leave gaps in what they cover, and those gaps can be expensive.
Since Hurricane Andrew made landfall in Dade County, the policies in Florida have changed dramatically, shifting more and more of the cost of reinsurance from the insurance company to the policyholder. Today, policyholders' deductibles for hurricanes are 2 or 3% of the value of the structure. So as the companies shifted more to the consumers are left with more and more gaps in their coverage. Also, they've changed the coverage a lot in terms of what is covered under the policy. Pool cages, for instance, are no longer covered. Things like spoiled food or, where your clothes and electronics are covered, certainly artwork or furs or jewelry is not covered under your policy. So it's very important for consumers to get educated as to what is covered by their policy, but even more important, what's not covered.
Up next, before the next season starts and the wind blows and water rises again, improve your hurricane IQ. It may save your life.
We've been in this home 24 and a half years. Living in Florida, we've experienced our own fair share of hurricanes, but never a flood. All that changed when Hurricane Matthew hit. Our entire home was flooded with almost 2 feet of water. We've had flood insurance ever since we moved here, and so now we're rebuilding our home from the ground up. We've got just an endless library of memories, and we look forward to many more years in this home.
This year's hurricane season is expected to be severe. How will you recover after the next storm? Get Storm Peace and get back on your feet faster. No adjusters, no deductibles, immediate cash after the storm for dollars a day. Storm Peace is supplemental insurance that covers uninsured losses, landscape, debris removal, evacuation expenses, even your homeowner's deductible. Payment wired to you within hours. Storm Peace is peace of mind for you and your family.
Welcome back to Get Ready Florida. Prepare, recover, rebuild.
The time to increase your hurricane IQ and your savviness to survive a big storm is now, not when one is bearing down. The National Hurricane Center is working to help coastal residents understand the deadliest part of any hurricane, storm surge.
Storm surge is literally a wall of water being pushed on shore. At certain levels, it's just not survivable. Storm surge accounted for most of the 1,200 deaths in Hurricane Katrina and claimed 41 lives in the Hurricane Sandy superstorm. But despite an incredibly active 2017 hurricane season, not one person died from storm surge. That's the year the National Hurricane Center began issuing surge watches and warnings.
You know, on a normal day, any of us here living in Florida, we go to one of our beautiful beaches and the water's just lapping up to our feet. It is really hard to imagine that water being pushed forward by a hurricane will rise 3 feet, 5 feet, 10 feet, or higher. It's hard for our brain to conceptualize that. So if you begin to do that and you realize you live in a home near that beach, that water is now going to start headed your way. That water has extreme power to it. The power of moving storm surge is incredible. Has the power to literally push, move over, and destroy a home. That's how people die in storm surge. National Hurricane Center in the last couple of years is really putting an emphasis on the danger of the water, storm surge. That's why they issue now storm surge watches and warnings. Over the years, it's killed more people than the wind. So the danger of the water is there. So with better forecasting, better communication, emergency management, and local officials, city officials, community officials, all in one page with one message getting the word out, has helped get people out of harm's way.
Other preventable deaths are caused by gaps in knowledge, things that could be remedied with a higher hurricane IQ.
Lives were lost in Hurricane Irma and Michael through a wide range of factors, some of which could have been prevented by education and preparation. These include such things as falls, heart attacks during those last-minute storm preparations, vehicle accidents as residents joined the throng of people staging a late evacuation, carbon monoxide poisoning and improper use of generators, electrocutions, and chainsaw accidents.
Let's face it, generators are a lifesaver after a storm, but they can also be really dangerous if not operated properly. Never ever operate a generator indoors, and that includes inside your garage, and also don't operate a generator outside within 3 to 5 feet of an open window or door. And finally, there's a fire risk. Fire risk comes from refueling a generator when it may be hot, and also don't store fuel inside your house or near the generator itself.
As soon as we realize the storm is coming, people need to start preparing instead of waiting until the last minute. When they do that, they put not only themselves at risk, but they put our first responders at risk, because our first responders cannot go out in the height of a storm. And once tropical force storm winds start hitting, everybody needs to be hunkered down where they are, and they need to be hunkered down in preparation of taking care of themselves for at least 3 days with water, food, and emergency supplies such as their medications and stuff for their pets, any other thing that they need to be able to survive for at least 3 days.
If you weathered the season without damage, please visit rebuild850.org and help those Floridians who are still recovering from Hurricane Michael. This is it, Florida, the new normal. Our state is the bullseye for hurricanes at a time when storms are likely to be bigger, more intense, cover more ground, drop more rain, and pose a greater threat to human life and property. During these times, hurricane survival demands a year-round commitment. So what's your hurricane IQ? Visit hurricanesafety.org and the Hurricane IQ quiz to test your knowledge and improve your hurricane survivability. Remember, you're not in this alone, but you are the first line of defense for yourself and your family. Visit hurricanesafety.org for a wealth of resources to help you stay safe. For Get Ready Florida, I'm Craig Fugate. Thank you for joining us, and stay safe out there.
This has been Get Ready Florida, sponsored by Florida Power and Light, Storm Peace, FedNat Insurance Company, and Y Green. And brought to you by the Fair Foundation, the International Hurricane Research Center at Florida International University, the National Emergency Management Association, the Salvation Army, and Rebuild 850.